Think about someone who, well, really surprised everyone. Maybe they weren't the most naturally talented.
Right. But they just worked incredibly hard.
Exactly. And achieved something amazing.
Yeah.
It really makes you wonder if talent is the main thing,
Mm-hmm.
Angela Duckworth, who we're focusing on today, her own father apparently told her she was no genius.
Yeah, I read that, which is pretty incredible considering she went on to win a MacArthur Fellowship. It says something, doesn't it?
It really does. It points to something beyond just raw ability.
And that's what's so compelling, right? Her whole exploration into what that something else actually is. She argues it's about passion and perseverance.
Directed towards long-term goals, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So today we're getting into this concept she calls grit, that mix of sustained passion and persistent effort.
Right.
Our main source is her book, Grit, The Power of Passion and Perseverance. And actually, if you're keen on exploring ideas like this, the YouTube channel Mindful Moments is worth checking out.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
It uses AI for book analysis, aiming to spark reflection, critical thinking. Kind of related to what we're doing here, understanding these big ideas.
Interesting. So, yeah, grit. Let's really define it.
Okay.
It's that sustained commitment, sticking with long-term goals, and having the toughness to push through when things get hard.
Crucially different from just talent, then.
Oh, definitely. Talent without effort. It's just potential, right? Like Will Smith said, talent's natural, but skill, that takes hours and hours of work.
Beating on your craft, as he put it.
Exactly. And Duckworth adds another layer. She says effort builds skill, okay, but effort also makes the skill productive. So it counts twice in the achievement equation.
Effort counts twice. I like that. It really drives home that talent needs fuel, and that fuel is constant work.
Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's like having a fancy car with no gas.
Right. But what's fascinating is how much society seems, hung up on innate talent. We seem to overlook the effort part sometimes.
Well, there's actually research on that. Chia and Say found this really interesting bias.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, even experts, people who consciously say they value hard work, often unconsciously favor people seen as naturals.
Really?
Like how?
Okay, so in one study, musicians listened to the same piano piece. They were told one pianist was a natural, the other a striver.
Oh.
They rated the natural as more likely to succeed, more hireable, same performance.
Wow.
And it happens in business, too. VCs apparently preferred a natural entrepreneur over a striver who actually had more experience and capital.
That's kind of sobering, isn't it? Makes you think about who gets overlooked.
It really does. Maybe we focus too much on those effortless-seeming success stories.
Yeah, but Duckworth's work, it gives real evidence for grit, especially when things get tough.
Think about West Point. The Beast Barracks training. Super intense.
Notoriously difficult.
Right. And Duckworth found that a cadet's score on her grit scale was a remarkably reliable predictor of who would actually finish Beast Barracks.
More reliable in it. More reliable than their SAT scores or even their overall whole candidate score, which looks at academics, leadership, fitness, everything.
That's incredible. So grit, that internal drive, mattered more than all those standard metrics in that specific high-pressure situation.
Pretty much. And it wasn't just West Point.
Where else did she see this?
She looked at salespeople. A vacation timeshare company, you can imagine the rejection rate there.
Oh, absolutely. Tough gig.
And again, grit was the best predictor of who'd stick with the job for at least 6 months. Better than being extroverted, better than being conscientious even.
So just sticking it out, that persistence was key. And she saw hints of this even earlier, right, when she was teaching.
Exactly. She noticed it with her math students. Some kids didn't seem to get it right away. They weren't the naturals, but they'd keep at it. They'd show up prepared, ask questions, take notes, work through the struggles. And eventually, they'd outperform the kids who seemed more gifted initially.
The overachievers, she called them.
Yeah. It makes you think of people like, say, John Irving, the author.
Great storyteller.
Celebrated now, sure. But he's been open about how much he struggled early on. He wasn't some effortless natural writer. His success came from rewriting, pure persistence.
Constant effort. Okay, so if grit, this passion and perseverance combo is so important, how do we actually develop it? Does it come from inside?
Well, Duckworth suggests it grows from the inside out, mainly through 4 psychological assets, things that develop over time.
Okay, what's the first one?
First up is interest. You know, genuine passion starts with actually enjoying what you're doing intrinsically.
Makes sense.
Will Shortz, the puzzle guy from the New York Times, his advice is basically Figure out what you love doing, then try to do it full-time.
Easier said than done sometimes, but yeah.
True, but research backs it up. People whose work aligns with their interests tend to be happier, more satisfied with their jobs and life overall.
And finding that interest, it's not always like a lightning bolt moment, right?
Not usually, no. It's often more of a discovery process. You try things, you develop an interest, it deepens, it takes time.
Okay, so cultivating interest first. What's number 2?
Number 2 is practice. But not just any practice. It's what Anders Ericsson called deliberate practice.
Right, I've heard of that. It's more focused, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not just logging hours. It's about setting specific, slightly challenging goals, stretch goals, focusing on your weaknesses.
Actively seeking out the hard stuff.
Yes, and constantly looking for feedback so you can improve. Think about Olympic swimmers like Rowdy Gaines trying to beat his best time every single practice.
Or Benjamin Franklin, how he taught himself to write better.
Right, analyzing and rewriting other people's essays, really methodical. And the research on spelling bee champs, the grittier spellers, they do way more deliberate practice.
So it's about the quality and focus of the effort, not just the amount.
Got it.
What comes after practice?
Third is purpose. This is about connecting what you do to something bigger than yourself.
Like a sense of meaning?
Yeah, often involving contributing to others' well-being somehow. Think about a wine critic whose mission isn't just tasting wine, but helping people understand their own tastes better.
Okay.
Or the classic example of the bricklayers. One sees it as just a job, another as a career, but the third sees it as a calling, building something lasting for the community.
And that perspective makes a difference.
Amy Wisniewski's research suggests it does. Viewing your work as a calling often leads to greater satisfaction and dedication. That sense of purpose fuels the perseverance.
Right, having that why beyond just yourself keeps you going. Okay, that's 3. What's the last internal piece?
The fourth is hope, but not just wishful thinking. Duckworth defines it more like resilience.
The ability to keep going when things are tough.
Exactly. It links to Marty Sullivan's work on learned optimism versus learned helplessness.
Ah, right. Optimists see setbacks as temporary, specific.
Exactly. While pessimists tend to see them as permanent and pervasive, it's always like this, and it affects everything.
And this ties into Grit House.
Well, research with Teach for America teachers showed that the more optimistic ones were also grittier and more effective. They believed they could overcome challenges.
That sounds like Carol Dweck's growth mindset, too.
Precisely. The belief that you can develop your abilities through hard work, rather than thinking they're fixed. Having that growth mindset fuels hope, which fuels grit. And again, for digging deeper into concepts like mindset and optimism, resources like Mindful Moments and our own podcasts can be really useful.
Okay, so that belief in our ability to improve is key for hope, and hope is key for grit. Makes sense. So that's the inside-out development. What about external factors? Does our environment play a role?
Yes, Duckworth definitely talks about outside influences too. One big one is what she calls wise parenting.
Wise parenting. What's that involved?
It's basically a mix of being warm and supportive, but also having really high expectations. Demanding, yet supportive.
A balance, then.
Right. She uses examples like Steve Young's upbringing or Francesca Martinez's different styles, but both had that combination.
Interesting. What else from the outside?
Extracurricular activities, but specifically sticking with challenging ones over time.
Not just trying something for a semester.
No, the sustained commitment. Following through. Research suggests this really helps build grit. Even college admissions folks, like Bill Fitzsimmons at Harvard, value seeing that long-term dedication on applications.
Shows follow through.
Exactly. And finally, culture. Being part of a group or environment that values and embodies grit can rub off on you.
Like norms and shared values reinforcing perseverance.
You absorb it from the environment.
Okay, so our surroundings definitely matter.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really insightful. To sort of wrap up the core idea, grit, that blend of passion and perseverance, seems incredibly important for long-term success, maybe even more so than just talent.
Yeah, that's the main takeaway. And we've seen it develops through those 4 key things from the inside. Interest, deliberate practice, purpose, and hope.
Plus those outside influences like parenting, activities, and culture.
Right. Which really leads to a question for you listening. How does this connect with your own life? Where have you seen grit or maybe a lack of it play out?
Yeah, think about your own goals. Where have passion and perseverance really made a difference for you?
Maybe reflect on those moments you found an interest or push through something really difficult.
And maybe consider, is there one area right now where you could apply a bit more grit, a bit more focused passion, and perseverance.
What small step could you take, even today, towards a long-term goal using that idea?
Good questions to ponder. Okay, so for our final thought and call to action, if you found this useful, subscribe to stay informed, maybe share it with someone else who'd appreciate it.
And if you want the full picture, consider checking out Angela Duckworth's book, Grit. There's usually a link in the show notes.
Absolutely. But most importantly, keep thinking critically about these ideas. What really drives achievement? And, maybe more importantly, fulfillment in your life?